Welcome back to the Culture Base Podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. Together we are the Culture Base. I'm working on like a new way of introducing us. How's that? Is that good?
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah. Okay.
I think more people will listen now.
Yeah. It was good having you on the YouTube while it lasted. Woo.
Oh man,
that was a great line.
Thanks.
A little jealous. All right. Well, let's just get into it since Blake's the one making jokes.
Listen, people, just watch all our other episodes. You know where to find us. You know what to do. Don't worry about any of that. We're getting into it today. Okay. We're just making things happen today. Okay. I'm tearing Dustin out of his process right now, and he's ready to punch me in the nose.
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
YouTube, we're on it. Go find us. Okay. What do you look up? You're going to go to that search engine. You're going to go to the Culture Base, and we're there.
.com.
Well, on YouTube, you can just search us, right? Like
that's true. On YouTube,
just make it happen. We want to see you there because we like it when you see our faces. Okay. I didn't not shave for a year for nothing. Okay. So if you want to see this, that's where it's at. So let's just dive in. You're here to know about something today. And today we're diving into building culture of creativity and innovation. Dustin, why don't we just jump in?
All right. I'm gonna keep all that in, but I would like to remind the folks, if I may, that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, share where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get them there. You can subscribe this podcast wherever you're listening. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook at The Culture Base. You can also follow us at theculturebase.com. The scalability playbook resources for you on theculturebase.com/resources, as well as the best interview questions ever PDF guide, and the Uncultured book by Blake Bayer is a free digital download for you right now.
Take that to the bank.
Bank. All right. On to the episode. As Blake so awkwardly mentioned, today we are talking about building a culture of creativity and innovation. When we talk about culture, we're often referring to the interpersonal interactions and motivations to scale your team like never before, right? It's all about how can we make things better and, be more attractive as an organization, keep people stick around, help them grow, that type of thing, right? They can be at a place they want to be at. But a huge component, Blake, of team culture is how you approach creativity and innovation. I want to share this quote with you, and then I know you have a story that segues perfectly. It's actually right from the quote, and I'm just kidding. The quote is this: if innovation is the engine to your organization's success, then creativity is the motor oil. Speaking of the Motor City, Blake, I think you have a story about your time in Detroit.
Yes. Who said that quote? Oh, okay, cool. It's just, you don't want to quote yourself. I was like, man, that's good. Who said that?
I decided I was going to throw a quote in there, and I was like, wait, I think I got something. And I wrote that down real quick. It's just an original idea. And when I said it in our pre-recording meeting of like going over the show notes together, you never once were like, that's good, or what? You just didn't say anything. You just kind of nodded. And I was like, all right, well, I guess he's going to find out live on air that was me. So
that's good. Well, I'm glad you didn't like Michael Scott it, right? Like,
no, I didn't.
Wayne Gretzky. Michael Scott. I got it. Cool. Yeah. So Detroit was up in Detroit a couple months back. I've said this story at least for 4 months, so that's not true anymore. And I always say a couple months back. So anyway, it's probably like 5 months ago. And in Detroit, and I'm at this conference with people in my industry who are doing just an unbelievable amount of growth. They have I was probably the smallest person by 10x, okay, as far as not my physical stature, but how many people were in our organization. We have about 60. I think the next smallest had 600 people in their organization. And so they're just these giants. I mean, I think the one team had 2,400 people on their team. And so I'm just definitely feeling out of my league, feeling that, what is that syndrome called when you feel like an imposter? It's like imposter syndrome. Yeah, I was definitely feeling imposter syndrome, and just like was downstairs in the lobby and had one of the people who was probably had 800 people in their organization, and they came down and they were like, "Hey, can I sit with you and kind of ask you some questions?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely. Like whatever I can do. You know, I want to feel like that small guy who's like, yeah, can I help? Yeah, sure, absolutely." And he was like, "Hey, do you feel like it's a little hard for you to maybe open up because there are other organizations here?" And the whole idea is like a mastermind, especially around labor and some of these other things, and getting creative about how to dig into this stuff. And I said, "No, not really, because honestly, at the end of the day, I can give my secret sauce away, but honestly, you have to have the right team that backs up that secret sauce for it to actually be truly effective, right? So I don't really care." And he kind of smiled and was like, "Yeah, that's a good answer." And I was like, "Oh, cool." So pass. And he was like, he told me, and it was like, kind of blew me away. He was like, "Everyone here is kind of nervous about you." And I was like, "What?" Like, I am the smallest fish here. I am not even close to where you guys are at. And he just was like, no. None of that matters. You don't realize. He goes, "So, okay, this software that we're here working with, how long did it take you to implement?" And I was like, "I mean, probably 3 weeks." And he just like shook his head. He was like, "It's taken the majority of people here 2 years to implement this software into their team." And he was just like, "Can I give you some advice?" And I was like, "Please, God." And he was like, "Okay, I think that you should just focus on innovation and development. Just be innovative, change this industry, do things nobody else is doing, because you will naturally grow in manpower and revenue. That will happen. It obviously takes strategy, but his point being, like, all that other stuff's going to come. If your foundation doesn't have this foundation of innovation and culture, you're not going to be able to truly grow and move things the way you want to move them when they become the size of the Titanic, or I guess that's a small ship today, but like some massive ship. It takes forever to course adjust or to turn around. You can do so much more with innovation and creativity and get an entire team behind something. And when you start off and you're building this culture of innovation and development, it's just pretty crazy how fast you can go on things. And you don't even need to grow a whole bunch of manpower. I want to, because I want to affect people. That's a really important part to our stuff. But what he even said, like, at the end of the day, your metric should be about developing your people and creating innovation. And it should be like a revenue per person that you're watching grow, or a gross profit per person. Like, he was giving really good tangibles to see how are we getting more innovative. And so, like, hearing that, I'm just like, oh man, this is really good stuff. And like, at that same time, I'm up there in Detroit going to like the Henry Ford Museum and seeing all this innovation. And it just is like clicking that, like, if we can create this culture in our team, like, I'm a factor of 1 when it comes to creativity and innovation. I'm a factor of 1. When I get around other people who are creative and innovative, and I have this culture, or this understanding that we're constantly going to look for the most creative idea. We're going to constantly look, how do we get better? How do we adjust? And innovation gets a lot of, like, when you say the word innovation, you start having this idea of what it is, and we'll dig into that in a minute. But a lot of times it's not that. Like, it is really continuing to evolve what you're doing. And so when I got back, I told my team a lot of these stories, and it was really neat to just see this passion all of a sudden click, because I said, we talk about problems all the time, and we talk about the solve as if we're just trying to get out of the question of the problem. But what we need to be doing is looking at every problem that we have as a creative landing, like just a base for us to start digging into. How can we innovatively like solve this? Like what's the answer that's just normal? Like, sure, that can be our first thing, but we better break into 6 other layers before we get to what the real answer is. And when you create a team around that, it is crazy the kind of stuff that comes out of this. You start developing your own tools, your own processes. Your team starts coming up with ideas. I've even heard some people on our team being like, hey, I think a couple of us were talking and we started to do 3D printing to create this tool that allows you to do this, or this thing that allows you to install something a little easier. And I'm like, that's just freaking brilliant. They didn't get paid for that. They didn't get some discussion about that. We didn't mind map it. They just went and did it. And because we have this idea that we are the most innovative, we are the most creative. And I'm telling you, that's going to take us so much further than 200 more people will.
Yeah, that's our episode today. Would love for you to like, subscribe, just get on all that. Yeah, I mean, what we really need to go into, I think, Blake, first is, I mean, what you start out there is just so well-rounded of a whole, like the why and the what and all that stuff. But I guess now that we've kind of seen the mountain, let's kind of explore the intricacies of it a little bit. So creativity, innovation, same coin, 2 different sides. You know, we had this conversation before we started recording that to me, what I tell people all the time is creativity is problem solving. That's something that's been said many, many times. It's not an original Dustin quote, but it's the ideation. But then there also has to be this innovation piece as well, that's developing something new or making existing things better. So if we look at it like a bicycle wheel, that creativity is the spokes, right? And innovation is the wheel. And so what we're trying to say here is that you need to kind of have both. Creativity just for creativity's sake isn't really solving problems, or you may be trying to solve problems that don't exist. Whereas innovation is saying, okay, that might not be the only way that we can solve this problem. There may be other ways we can solve this problem. And so the two join together, and that's why we end up having what we have. And so I'd love to know from you, Blake, as we kind of continue this conversation, why creativity and innovation is so vital to the success of your organization and the overall team health.
So I think the answer comes to, do you want your organization and team to grow the company, or do you need to be part of every aspect? And I think this is where creativity and innovation is crucial to the organism being itself, for the garden to flourish, for it to get as big as it wants to get. If you don't allow these aspects into your organization, or you poo-poo them, or you talk down about them, I think the reality is you're essentially saying, no, I'm not using a backhoe on this 12-acre plot to do all this stuff. We got to do it by hand. You're limiting the ability for you to succeed. And that's a big deal. Like, nobody wants to have that limiting of their ability, especially entrepreneurs and those running organizations. They want their organization to be able to flourish and scale. That's why we're doing a lot of this, right? And I think that a lot of people quit quick because people go to no quicker. And when you have organizations and people who quick to say no to something, or no, you can't do that, people become terrified to start digging into the creative process with people. They become terrified to open their mouth. And so this is where we step in and we say, you know what? Part of creativity, and this is kind of a Brene Brown thing on the way she works through her mind, like mind thoughts and stuff like that, is mind thoughts. It's my new word. She calls them.
You read those?
Yeah, she calls them SFDs, which are shitty first drafts. And the whole idea is just get it out there. What'd you say?
I said explicit.
Explicit. Yeah, by the way. They're the shitty first drafts. And I think ideas and creativity is that too, right? It is we've got to just like give permission quickly. Hey, why don't we all just like, what's the real obvious answer? What's the shitty first draft here? And now let's dig in. Let's go deeper. Let's dig into something as an organization, as a team. We're behind this. And when you allow those things and you don't push out people who say no too quick, but you censor them. You go, hold on. We're talking creatively here. And creativity is a friend to failure. Okay. Creativity says we're going to make mistakes. Let's make them quick and let's dive in and let's figure out what is the bare bones. It's really like have an idea, deconstruct, reconstruct. And so how can you got to start with something to deconstruct from in order to really build something great.
Yeah. I know we've talked about failure on this podcast before, but you really can't cultivate to the max a culture of creativity and innovation without not just being accepting of failure, but celebrating it, which sounds very productive to what maybe you might be trying to build. I think a lot of business leaders are afraid to fail, and we don't need to fail publicly per se. I think that's where a lot of times when business leaders hear, hey, celebrate failure, it's not necessarily like you're releasing a press release every time it fails. I was reading this book the other day. It talked about how Thomas Edison with the light bulb, we all know that story, right, of him coming up with all these different ways to not make a light bulb. That was kind of the quote of him when he finally had that breakthrough. But he spent 2 years of his life trying to extract the iron from sand to be able to use in the light bulb. 2 years, and it never happened. It never happened. But what he learned is that that's a road that's a dead end. And he wouldn't have known that road was a dead end unless he had traveled down it.
Yeah.
Now, you may not think that you have the margin to fail. I beg you to create the margin to fail.
Yeah, good call.
Create the margin to fail. I love this quote. This just makes me think about creativity and innovation. So it has really nothing to do with what I'm saying right now, but I'm going to share it anyway. It's one of my new favorite quotes. It does have to do with creativity and innovation. It doesn't have to do with what I'm talking about right now. So, comma, period. Next topic. There's a great quote in Willy Wonka, which Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is written by one of my favorite authors, Roald Dahl. Roald Dahl wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and in that, the character Willy Wonka quotes a poem by Arthur Shaughnessy. It's an ode by Arthur O'Shaughnessy, and he says that we are the music makers, we are the dreamers of dreams. Can you imagine that if that idea was so ingrained into your company, just like Blake was saying in that story that he told us about his time in Detroit. Hey, all the other things, the success, the money, the growing your team, the franchising opportunities, the growth, the expansion, like all these things, the influence, all that will come with creativity and innovation if you focus on that as a team and as a culture, and if you celebrate that as a team and a culture. So what if you decided that in your industry that you're the makers, that you're the makers? Blake would never brag on himself like this, but I'll say that there's, in his industry, the electrical industry, there was a tool that they wanted to be able to have to make their job easier and more effective. The tool didn't exist. And instead of being like, man, sucks, I just wish we had something like that, and just leaving it like that, they went out and made the tool. They are the makers. Mm-hmm. They are the dreamer of dreams. And they dared to dream that something like that could exist, rather than accepting the harsh reality that thing didn't currently exist, mm-hmm. and living in that space. So as much practicality as we're going to be talking about here for the second half of this episode, I want you to just try to get into that mindset that we're trying to introduce you to today. that you can be makers and you can be dreamers, and all the other success can come along with it as long as you have the team that supports you. And that's what we're focusing on when we're talking about scalable teams. We're talking about making sure that you have the team to help you innovate and be makers and be dreamers in your industry like never before.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's get into how we do some of this stuff. So you're like, okay, great. I get it. I'm inspired. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be the makers. I'm ready to be the changers, the dreamers, the movers, the shakers, whatever. How do I do that? I think for me, Blake, there's two things. There's an entryway and there's an exit ramp that need to be established in order for creativity and innovation to exist successfully within the walls of your organization. Number one, I think you need to define what is okay to invite in. What's okay to invite in, and be super communicative. Is that right? Or is that the right word? About that? You want to be able to tell people like, hey, even though I may be the head honcho, the CEO, I don't care if you're a janitor at this company. If you have an idea, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
So that's communicating what is okay to let in. Now, there's also the what to protect against, which is the negativity and we could never. So like in the example of the story that I told about Blake and his company developing that tool, they could have just said, man, yeah, that would be nice, but that's just not the reality. Oh, well, shrug shoulders and move on. That is the type of mentality that you want to protect against, and that's the stuff that you want to send down the exit ramp as soon as possible. Blake, what are some of the things that you see that you need to be able to invite in and protect against to be able to have this type of culture?
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about it a minute ago. Being careful with quick to knows, like as far as an NO, like it needs to be what ifs, and it needs to be very. If we had no limitations, what could this look like? And I think a lot of times when it comes to creativity and ideation, because I think those are really similar in how you get there, I think we have our own no monster in our head. Okay. I can't solve this because of this. I don't have a background in this. So therefore I can't fix it. I can't solve it. And so we just stop so quickly. And there's a crazy good book called Range, and it's all about how generalization is actually more important to big creative problem solving than specialization is. And so this is why like Lilly created a whole company for open sourcing ideas in the medical, or what are they? They do a lot of drugs and stuff like pharmaceutical. Thank you. They created a whole open sourcing. And the idea was we just want everyone to come up with an idea for this. And a lot of other industries have used this. When there was a massive oil spill out in one of the oceans or the Gulf, they open sourced, how do we fix this problem? Because what's happening is all this oil and stuff is starting to congeal and create this peanut butter like substance. And this one chemical engineer said he started looking into it because he was excited about the problem solving. And he was like, I don't think I can solve this from a chemical engineering perspective, because in order to fix this, I got to add more chemical to it. And it's just going to cause more issues. There's so many variables I can't figure out. But he went back to this time when he worked in concrete, and how there are these things that go around concrete, and anytime it congeals to a certain point, you vibrate it and it liquefies more so that you can get a hold of what you need to get a hold of. And he came up with that solution, and it's like, oh, what a great idea. What a great solution. He didn't solve that as a chemical engineer. He solved that as a mason. And like, that's what's different is when we go to know so quickly, we miss out on really the genius of problem solving and bringing innovation into our world. And one of my favorite quotes, and I think it's attributed to Edison as well. It's that he says that all ideas are in the air, and it's that they don't belong to anyone. These are not anyone's ideas. They are open to be had. I see so many people stop at creativity and innovation, and sure, maybe more in the like inventing side of things. I see people stop really quick because I think that they have a bigger a bigger guardrail than the guardrails that are actually there. I think they have a quick stop. Well, somebody's already probably thinking of it. I don't want to waste my time. Okay, well, maybe they aren't. And maybe nobody else is putting effort towards this. And if they are, who cares? You're solving the problem. And we just go to stop so quick that we miss out on gold, right? And that's one of the other quotes that I love, and I have no idea who said this, but that they said that the richest place in the world is the graveyard. And it's because so many people had the ideas, they had the innovative solutions to things, and they never put them forth. They stayed in their heads. And so then all of a sudden, all those people were never invited in to a conversation. They were never invited in to start discussing, how do we create a good culture? How do we use these awesome ideas to just create a wealth of value to the world?
Yeah. It's Dr. Miles Monroe, who was a preacher. He's attributed with the quote, "The graveyard is the richest place on earth."
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Never heard of that guy. So great.
All good. All ideas are in the air. Is a Thomas Edison quote as well. So, So I think we've been extremely practical. We've been we've been a little practical. We've been extremely inspirational. I want to end with one or two really practical next steps that you can take if you're like, okay, I get the why, I understand why we need to be this way, what we need to introduce to the company. I know how we need to do it by introducing things and being okay with certain things and being, kind of like, hey, this isn't okay, establishing some of those rules of engagement, when it comes to this, and making sure everybody understands it from the top down and it's celebrated often. But I want to just end, Blake, on, if there's one or two things that someone listening or watching to this today could bring them closer to building this culture of creativity and innovation, I'd love for you to share about. We've talked about this many, many times on this podcast before, but in the context of creativity and innovation, can you talk about Notes Days? I know you got that from Ed Catmull of Creativity Inc., which is a book that I'm getting back into reading annually now. It's going to be on my annual rotation. Can you just talk about what that looks like for you guys, and how easy that is to kind of you can start this right away, and how can someone practically implement this?
Yeah. That the whole actions speak louder than words. This is where you can be like, man, I really do want a culture of creativity and innovation. I want people thinking for themselves. I want them problem solving and coming up with really exciting solutions. And you can say that, and you can go tell people that stuff. But as soon as someone tries something and fails and you freak out, you just destroyed the ability for that to be created.
Yeah.
Okay? So Notes Day is a very practical way to give space to have those conversations. Because chances are, if you have been like, why did you do that? I can't believe you did that. And you freak out on these people and then they clam up, you probably weren't thinking about creativity and innovation at the time. Okay. You were probably not in the right headspace. It is not, in fact, very easy to get into that headspace.
Can I interrupt too, just what you're saying about not being in the right headspace? I think it's difficult to cultivate a culture of creativity and innovation if your headspace and your mental capacity of you and everyone in your team is always on the defense.
Yeah.
Creativity and innovation is offense. It's offensive,
yeah.
Right? It's offensive. You're moving forward. You're not playing defense. So if you're just like, hey, you know what? We've got to protect the shareholders, or we've got to protect the bottom line, or we can't afford to have a bad quarter like that. Yeah, I mean, use wisdom, but you can't create your best and innovate at your best as an organization when you're playing defense. Anyway, continue. Notes Days.
Yeah. So Notes Days is basically the concept. You're going to have to look this one up too. So, but it is that idea that you can't both be in the system and work on the system at the same time. You can't see it clearly to be zoomed down deep into your business and then understand it at its highest complex level, because you don't see all the parts. And so Notes Day, what that is a time of zooming out and saying, what are the creative things we can do? What are the problems that are getting in our way? And how do we creatively solve this problem? We kind of have a process for creative problem solving at our company. We say, first, look at the problem, ask it all the questions that you possibly can. Okay. Like, get exhaustive with questions of the problem. Second, and it's important that you say it this way: if we were the most creative people in the world, how would we solve this? It is so important that you put it that way, because you're assuming that you are. And now your headspace is not in a place of just like so many. When you get a whole 10 question multiple choice, you're just looking for the right answer. Okay. And you're looking for the first right answer. I don't even care. Let's go. Boom, 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 boom. We're going to look for a lot of right answers. That's the thing about creativity, is it's got so many paths that we can go down to come to solution. And so we want all of them. And then lastly, we want to just come up with something to move forward on. And in the problem solving aspect, like if somebody called me and was like, I don't know what to do, what should I do? I would tell them, look at the problem, come up with all your questions. If you're the most creative person in the world, how are you going to solve it? And then you can call me back once you have a solution. We as creative innovators have to bring solutions. Those solutions could suck. They could be shitty first drafts, but they got to be solutions, because when you come to problem and you stay at problem, we've got problems. When you go to problem, you bring a solution, we get creative. And I love, and I can't not talk about this. In Creativity Inc., they talk about that no idea is singular. Ideas are plural. They are made up of 1,000 different decisions and 1,000 different perspectives. And earlier I said, I'm a factor of one when it comes to problem solving. NoteStay is a factor of whatever people are there. And I believe so greatly that it is the same type of, not if Dustin and I were in the same room, we don't have a multiplier of 2. I think we have a multiplier that's like how oxen, like a horse can pull 2,000 pounds by itself, but 2 of them together can pull 8,000 pounds. That math doesn't work. That's stupid math, but it's true. And so I think that's the way that ideation and creativity is that the multiplier is way larger than the sum of the parts. Yeah. And so that's what's so exciting. That's what NoteStay creates. You throw problems on the board, you pick 3, and then you break into groups and you start talking about the solves, and you let people bring up solves and bring up more problems of, hey, I think this is the one we need to look at. And it's uncomfortable, but it's good. Man, it's so good.
Yeah, it is so good. It is so good. And that was so good. And this has been a great episode. We could talk about this forever. We probably will revisit it at some point, but we'd love to hear from you too. If there are ways that you've introduced this into your company that have worked or haven't worked, we'd love to learn from your failures as well. So drop us a line, head on over to theculturebase.com, contact us there. I'm sure there's an email address on there. If not, you can email me, dustin@theculturebase.com. Would love to hear from you there. Next time, Blake, episode 56. We're going to get a little bit of got the Olympic spirit here, right? That's going on right now. The balancing act, right? That's what we're going to do. Maybe that's more circusy. But the balancing act of information. How much is too much and how much is not enough? Information overload. That's what we're going to talk about next time. Episode 56. Have an amazing week. Cannot wait to talk to you next time on the Culture Base Podcast.